Welcome back, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. This is Real Big Ten Football Talk +1 with Chris. I am Chris. This is Week 10 of the 2018 college football season. And without further ado, let's get to our first matchup of the week, which pits the Michigan State Spartans sitting at 5-3, 3-2 in Big Ten play at the Maryland Terrapins at 5-3 as well, and also 3-2 in Big Ten play. Both teams have taken different turns as of late. Maryland has started to take a nosedive a little bit, and Michigan State is starting to gain some steam. I do think, even though they lost to Michigan a couple weeks ago, that kind of helped to, I think, rekindle the fire they had to start the year. Which a lot of us forget, they did end up beating actually a very good Utah State Aggie team at the beginning of the year. That Aggie team is, in course, I believe 7-1 right now, so it's not a bad win, and we'll look at that here in a minute. But I want to talk real quick. Like I said, I think both teams are taking different directions, so I think that might help and hurt both teams this week. I do believe both teams do want this victory because it would be another decent, not high-profile victory, but both teams are definitely wanting that sixth win because, of course, as those of you that follow college football know, that sixth win is a magical win because it makes you bowl eligible. Both teams would love to get bowl eligible, considering Michigan State was outside of the bowl season looking in a couple years ago. Maryland is always a kind of up-and-down team. They have been since they joined the Big Ten. I had higher hopes for Maryland than they've shown when they came into the Big Ten. I still don't understand why we have records in the Big Ten, but that's a different video for a different time. But without further ado, let's look at this game, shall we? Michigan State, like I said, they did play a tough Utah State Aggie team early in the year. I didn't think it was as good of a win as it has turned out to be. That's why it is green. If you did notice, another Michigan State game I did earlier in the year, I believe it was either yellow or even red. I've changed it to green because it wasn't a bad win. Then at Arizona State the next week. Arizona State, not a bad team, but they are 4-4, so I did make that a bad loss in red because they've really, well, they haven't struggled. I looked up Arizona State's schedule also. The 4 games they've lost have been by 7 points each. I believe literally 7 points each. So that's not bad losses, which means Arizona State's not a horrible team, but they don't have as much talent. That was a good game. It was an excellent game. It was a late game, so I lost some sleep the next day for work, but that was a good game. But as it's turned out, Michigan State's 5-3, Arizona State's 4-4. Michigan State really needed to win that game. They did not, so I have it as a bad loss. The next week at Indiana, Michigan State did well, 35-21 to a very tough, resurgent, but not horribly talented Indiana Hoosiers team. Central Michigan, 31-20. At least they beat them. Not impressive. They get up 20 points to a comparatively weak MAC school. So the next week, what they do to follow that up with? Not a bad team to lose to by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, Northwestern might end up winning the Big Ten West. But you're Michigan State. You have high hopes for yourselves. You really want to undo that 2016 season. It's not the way to do it, personally. But it's not a bad loss. I'm not going to give it a red. I'll give it a yellow as a caution loss because that game they could have won if they have a few things that would turn around for them. They didn't. At Penn State that next week, excellent victory for Michigan State. Bad loss to Penn State because Penn State had every opportunity to win that game, but they could not do it. Good win for Michigan State. And again, like I said, the Michigan loss a couple of weeks ago, not a bad loss because Michigan State played Michigan probably the best anyone's played Michigan since Notre Dame. And that, I believe, gave Michigan State confidence into the next week where they played a good Purdue Boilermaker team, a Boilermaker team that had beaten Ohio State the week before by an ungodly high margin, and they beat Purdue, of course, in Michigan State, but they still beat a good Purdue team regardless. And that will be the game we look at here in a minute for Michigan State's recent marquee win. For Maryland. Your best win was the first game of the year, which we can't really look at anymore as an important win, in my opinion, because Week 10. But you did beat Texas, which has turned out to be a very good win. 34-29 in Maryland, but still a good win against a very good opponent. At Bowling Green the next week, 45-14, a dominating win over a comparatively weak opponent, but a good win. And then Temple, a bad loss. I still don't understand why you lost to Temple, 35-14 in College Park. Then the next week, you beat Minnesota 42-13, lost to Michigan in Ann Arbor the next week by a large margin. That's why I have it as a red loss, 42-21. Then you beat Rutgers 34-7 the next week at home. Then you lost to Iowa 23-zip. And then you beat Illinois 63-33. Maryland, you are an inconsistent team. When you win, you really win. When you lose, you really lose badly. Something to be said about that. The inconsistency is what's killing you, and I think that's why your season is starting to take a different turn. I do believe the whole scandal with DJ Durkin is starting to resonate out, unfortunately for you, because it is still very much in the media. I'm sure your players are still getting questioned all the time about it, so I know it has to be starting to get in their heads a little bit, and I do believe that is the reason why Maryland has lost these games they've lost and have struggled in the games that they've struggled in. And I believe having an interim coach that you don't know if they're going to be there next year is the reason why you're so inconsistent, which is sad, and I feel for the Maryland players because it can't be easy to deal with. But for what it's worth, I think they've done a great job at sitting at 5-3 at this point anyway. I honestly thought they'd be at 2-6 at this point in the year, just because of all the scandals. 5-3 is very impressive, and Maryland fans, you should be happy with your team for being as good as they have been this year, based on the circumstances. Moving forward, Michigan State at Maryland, they've played each other a few times over the years, but not horribly often. 2017, Michigan State did beat Maryland 17-7. 2016, Maryland did beat Michigan State once, 28-17, but that was a bad year for Michigan State, as I mentioned before. 2015, Michigan State smacked Maryland in East Lansing, 24-7. 2014, again, Michigan State annihilated Maryland, 37-15 in College Park. And then they didn't play each other before 2014 until 1950, when Maryland beat Michigan State 34-7 in College Park. So like I said, they haven't played each other a horrible amount of times, but they have played each other still before Maryland was in the Big Ten. Michigan State's recent marquee win. This is a new segment that I've started this week because it is Week 10. I don't believe you beat a high-profile team like Maryland did in the first week of the year. It doesn't mean as much at this point in the year. This point in the year is what have you done for me lately? And that is what football is about. What have you done lately? What has Michigan State done lately? They beat a Purdue team that held Ohio State to 20 points and scored 49. Michigan State held this same Boilermaker team to 13 points last week. I don't care where they played them. That's still an impressive win regardless. Looking at the stats, quite impressive for Michigan State considering their offense hasn't been great this year, which we'll look at in a little bit. I've also changed the structure a little bit of this. I've actually made in green the negatives of the team they played against because that shows how dominant Michigan State, for example, was in this case in that game. What did they do to Purdue? They held Purdue to 16 first downs, 23% third down efficiency. That is 3 of 13, 62 yards on the ground, 277 yards to the air. Little bit of a question mark for Michigan State. Allowed Purdue 29 of 49 passing, but they forced Purdue into throwing 3 interceptions, 0 passing touchdowns, only 339 yards of total offense. Purdue did commit only 4 penalties for 30 yards. This is an orange because I don't believe another team forces penalties. I believe penalties are 100% self-imposed. That's my opinion. That's why it's an orange, because I don't really count it as having a crucial impact on the game, in this game anyway. They forced Purdue into 3 turnovers, and Purdue only held onto the ball for 21 minutes and 47 seconds. That means their defense was on the field 38 minutes and 13 seconds, which means Michigan State's defense was well rested, which is something to be said. They were well rested because they held Michigan State to only 23% on third down. They held them to 0 passing touchdowns, to 62 yards on the ground. That's dominant defense for Michigan State. And then what did Michigan State do on their side of the field? 26 first downs Michigan State acquired. Only 6 of 16 on third down, though. That is a caution for me at 37.5%. Third down efficiency is not great. You always want to be at least above 40%, especially in a winning performance, in my opinion. Only 148 yards on the ground, but as we'll look at later, Michigan State has not been impressive running the football this year on offense. Passing the ball, 318 yards through the air. That's impressive. 26 of 46 passing. 2 passing touchdowns to 0 picks thrown. An impressive performance for a Michigan State backup quarterback. And I apologize, I can't remember the young man's name at this point. But Brian Lewerke got hurt last week, and this kid has stepped up to the plate and did an excellent job against a very good Purdue team. Penalties committed, 6 for 61 yards, not very good. Michigan State definitely needs to be careful of that, playing a Maryland team but unfortunately for Maryland, they do commit too many penalties. And like I already said, Michigan State held onto the ball for 38 minutes and 13 seconds. Michigan State won the time of possession battle, won the turnover battle, won the third down efficiency battle. All 3 phases, as I've said in another video, important to win. Michigan State dominated on all 3 fronts, and that is why they won this game. For Maryland, what have they done recently? I will also use their most previous game because they scored 63 points. But there's always a flip side to that. When you allow 33 points, you don't win very often. You're lucky your offense scored 63 points. In this particular game, Maryland's best defense was the fact that their offense stayed on the field for so much longer in Illinois' offense. That's why they won the game. Looking at the stats, Illinois still acquired 20 first downs, 232 yards on the ground. They converted on 40% of their third downs, and this was in a losing effort, mind you, for Illinois. Illinois acquired 261 yards through the air, 14 of 32 passing. That is a good part for Maryland. They did hold Illinois to under 50% passing efficiency. That is impressive. But they allowed 2 passing touchdowns, only acquired 1 interception, allowed 493 yards of total offense. Illinois did well to only commit 2 penalties for 25 yards. Maryland did force 1 turnover, and they forced Illinois to only hold on to the ball for 25 minutes and 45 seconds. That's impressive, and that's part of the reason why you won. Because your offense was on the field for just so much longer. What did you do on offense, Maryland? Very well. 30 first downs, 80% third down efficiency. That's almost perfect. 431 yards on the ground, 281 through the air, 13 of 21 passing collectively, 3 passing touchdowns to 0 picks thrown, 712 yards of total offense. Very impressive, Maryland. But you did commit 7 penalties for 85 yards. That is not impressive. That is self-imposed. You have to clean up the penalties. I've been saying that all year to you, Maryland. You cannot continue to commit 7 and 8 penalties per game and expect to win the high-profile games. That's why you've lost to the likes of Iowa and Michigan and Temple this year. Too many daggone penalties. 0 turnovers. Very impressive. And like I said, you held on to the ball for 34 minutes and 15 seconds. Maryland, you dominated on time of possession, third down efficiency, and the turnover battle. You won because of those 3 things. You got lucky because you did commit too many penalties. But you scored 63 points. Something to be said about that. But you did allow 33 points to a comparatively weak opponent in Illinois. No offense, Illini faithful. It's just the way it is, unfortunately, for you this year. That is why you won Maryland. Now, moving forward. Rushing splits. Michigan State, you do not do well on the ground, and that is an understatement. 107.6 yards per game you gain on average. That's dead last in the country. That's why it's highlighted in red. But on the flip side of that, what do you do on defense against the run? Excellent at 77.4 yards allowed per game. That is first nationally. That's why it's highlighted in green, because that is impressive. Maryland runs the ball very well at 246.3 yards per game. That is 11th nationally. Maryland doesn't do great against the run at 151.8 yards given up per game. That is 59th nationally. Caution flag there. Not horrible, not great. Lucky for you, Maryland, you're not going against a running heavy team as you see in the stats for Michigan State. Team passing offensive splits. As you can see, I've added some more stats this week. I hope you enjoy them. I wanted to paint a better picture of how these teams do operate, and I'll be doing this for the rest of the videos I do this week. Just want to give you a quick heads up. Completion percentage. Both teams are lousy at completing passes through the air. How else would you complete passes? I don't know why I said that. Ha ha ha. Completion percentage for Michigan State. What completion percentage? 56.3%. That is 95th nationally. Maryland almost dead last at 52.9% completion percentage. That's pretty horrible. Passing per game. Michigan State not horrible, but not great at 253.3 yards per game on average. That is 44th nationally. Maryland, you do horrible in the passing game, but 131.4 yards per game. That is 125th nationally. So I apologize, Michigan State fans. Your rushing per game is not dead last. I forgot. There were 125 teams, I believe, in the FBS. So Maryland, you are dead last, I believe, in passing offense. If there are more than 125 teams, I apologize. Sacks allowed, 20 for Michigan State. That might be why Brian Lewerke got hurt last week. Because you let him get his tail taken off every single game. 20 sacks allowed. We're at week 10. You've played 8 games. You're allowing just over 2 sacks per game allowed. It's not good. That's 87th nationally, in fact. Passes had intercepted. Michigan State, you've thrown 7 picks this year. That's just under 1 average per game. Not great considering your quote-unquote offense, use the term loosely because your offense is not great, is more geared towards the passing game, so you throw more picks than I think you should, based on the fact that you do pass the ball more and you run. Sacks allowed for Maryland, not horrible at 15, but you don't throw the ball horribly often, as it shows in the stats. That's 52nd ranked nationally. Passes had intercepted, you have thrown 4 so far this year. Not bad. But ideally, of course, you always want to have that at 0, but you're going through picks sometimes. It does happen. We understand that. Completion percentage allowed for Michigan State. Again, quite horrible. You are allowing 62.58% of the opposing quarterback's passes to be complete. That's better than you're actually gaining on offense, which is quite horrible. That is 89th nationally. This is passing defensive splits, just to remind you. Maryland is excellent at 50.6% completion percentage allowed. That is 7th nationally. That is impressive. Team sacks, Michigan State has had 17 this year at 60th nationally. Not bad, but not great. Maryland at 12 sacks per game. That's 109th nationally. That's also quite horrible. Interceptions gained, both teams have done pretty well at picking off the passes. At 12 gained for Michigan State, that's 8th nationally. Maryland, excellent job at 14, that is 1st nationally. Passing yards allowed, Michigan State, you are horrible against the pass. 275.9 yards per game you're giving up on average. If we go back to your passing offense for a moment, you're giving up more passing yards through the air than you are gaining on offense. On defense, that is quite horrible. In fact, that passing yards allowed per game rank is 113th nationally. For Maryland, quite good. Passing yards allowed, 186 per game. That is 22nd nationally. Quite good for Maryland. Michigan State does hold onto the ball on average 33 minutes per game to Maryland's 28. That's quite bad if you're Maryland. Total offense, neither team is very good. 360.9 yards per game on average For Michigan State, that's 104th nationally. Maryland, 377.6 yards per game. That is 92nd nationally. Neither team is very good at offense. That's just the way it is statistically this year. Third down efficiency. What third down efficiency for Michigan State? They are at 31.9% per game. This is offensive efficiency, by the way, not defense. That is 121st nationally for Michigan State. Maryland, not bad, not great, but pretty good at 43.1% per game. That is 37th nationally. Turnover margin, +3 for Michigan State versus +9 for Maryland. Michigan State, that is 38th nationally to Maryland's 7th nationally turnover margin rank. And just in case you folks were wondering, where is my red zone offense information? That is on the next slide. As I said, I have changed things up a little bit this week as far as the structure of the slides. For this particular one, I wanted to show more information and wanted to show it in a more efficient manner. So this is red zone offensive efficiency for both teams. And as you can see, neither team has done great in the red zone. Michigan State, not bad at 3.6 red zone attempts per game, a new stat, because I do believe red zone attempts are important because it not only shows how well you do in the red zone as far as percentages go, but how often do you get there? I think there's something to be said about that. How many opportunities do you give yourself inside the red zone? And then how well do you do at those opportunities you give yourself? I think that is very important. For Michigan State, 3.6 attempts per game, not bad. That is 53rd nationally. Red zone touchdown percentage, quite awful at 58.6% per game. 86.2% in total scoring percentage for Michigan State. Not bad at 55th ranked nationally. Maryland, your red zone scoring attempts are atrocious at 2.1 per game. That is 126th nationally. But with those 2.1 attempts you have per game, you've scored touchdowns 82.3% of the time. Not bad. And you've scored every time you've been inside the 20. Something should be said about that. That is, of course, first nationally. How can it not be, of course? How can you do more than 100% of anything? Good luck. But 100% scoring percentage, that is impressive regardless of if you've only been there 2.1 times per game this year. That's horrible, but at least you are making the best of getting inside the 20 once you do get there. So good on you, Maryland. Now, looking at the defensive efficiency splits for both teams. Total turnovers gained for Michigan State, that's 15. That's 26th nationally. Both teams do very well forcing turnovers. Maryland, 16 per game, that is 22nd nationally. Both teams very well at forcing turnovers. Total defense, both teams do struggle. Michigan State at 353.3 yards per game on average given up in total. That is 41st nationally. For Maryland, 356.1 yards per game. That is 44th nationally. Again, not bad, not great. But with Michigan State, look at who they played and look at who Maryland has played. Maryland, you should be doing better than that against the teams you played. You have not played offensive juggernauts like Michigan State has played. Third down percentage allowed per game. Quite good for Michigan State, 33.3%. That is 30th nationally. Whereas Maryland, 38% on average, you're giving up third down conversion-wise per game. That is 57th nationally. Not bad, but not great. Moving on to offensive scoring efficiency. Michigan State all red for a reason. If we look real quick, we'll see why it's all red. Total scoring per game, you're only scoring 23.4 points per game. Don't know what game you think you're playing, but you do play football. And what do you have to do in football? You have to score some points. You rank 96th nationally in total scoring per game. First quarter, you're quite horrible at 3.6 points per first quarter per game. That is 112th nationally. Fourth quarter scoring per game, you're only scoring 4 points per game in the fourth quarter. That's 119th nationally. Now I should backtrack a bit. Why am I showing you these stats? Well, of course, like I said, scoring is part of winning any game really. Football, basketball, baseball, whatever. At the end of the day, at the very end of the day, what's going to matter more? How many yards you gain or how many points you score versus how many points you allow or how many yards you allow. Obviously, it matters how many points you allow and how many points you score at the very end. Stats can tell you why you scored X amount of points, but you also want to look and see how many points you are scoring per game. And I also like to look at points scored per quarter because I like to see how quick and how hot a team starts out in the game and how well they perform in the last quarter. That clutch quarter, if you will. That's why I picked the first and the fourth, not the second and third. Because you want to start out quick and you want to end quick. Or not quick. You want to start out hot. But you also want to end hot. But if you start out slow, but you end well, that can be good and bad. With Ohio State, they started out horribly against Purdue. Did okay in the second half, but when you're playing big name teams, you need to do well in first and the fourth quarters. You need to be a consistent, reliable, steady team. Those steady teams win those tougher games. For Michigan State, you're quite horrible at all aspects of scoring. Maryland, you're not bad. 31.6 points per game, but it's 37th nationally. First quarter scoring per game, 7.4 points, That is 41st nationally. Not bad. Fourth quarter, quite excellent for Maryland. You do well in the clutch at scoring 10 points on average per fourth quarter. That is 13th nationally. Good on you, Maryland. Michigan State, you need to score some points to win some games. That is definitely a 100% reason why you are 5-3, because you don't score enough. Well, at least that's part of the reason anyway. Looking at defensive scoring efficiency, it starts to kind of take a 180, especially for Michigan State. You're only giving up 21 points per game. That is 24th nationally. First quarter, you shut down the opposition very well at only allowing 3.4 points per first quarter. That is 15th nationally. Fourth quarter, you struggle a lot. In fact, that can also be a contributing factor to why you've lost some of the close games you've lost. You give up on average 8.5 points per fourth quarter. That is 103rd nationally. For Maryland, not great. You've given up 24.5 points per game. That is 43rd nationally. In the first quarter, you give up 7.4 points per game on average. That is 41st nationally. Not horrible by any stretch of the imagination, but not great. Fourth quarter is where you make your claim to fame, though, Maryland, however, at only giving up 5.4 points per game in the fourth. That is 32nd nationally. Maryland, you do well in the fourth, but you struggle in the first. Neat little tidbits. Teams have played each other for the first time in 1944. Michigan State did win that very highly offensive juggernaut of a game at 8-0. Michigan State does hold the advantage in this series at 7-2 with 0 ties. Both teams have played each other each year since 2014, when they were both part of the same division of the Big Ten. Prior to 2014, they played each other last in 1950. Maryland's all-time win-loss tie record is 649, 592, and 43. Michigan State's is close at 699, 456, and 44. Both teams have been around for a long time. That's what that tells me. And both teams know how to win. They both know how to lose as well, unfortunately. But as an all-time record, if you can be over 500, that area is something to be said about your football program. Keys to the game. What does Michigan State need to do? They need to develop a running game. Again, you're only gaining on average 107 yards per game on the ground. You need to be better balanced. You're the more battle-tested team, and Maryland is excellent against the pass. Michigan State, you have to use the passing game, but you also need to use the running game as well. You have to keep Maryland's defense guessing. Shut down Maryland in the fourth quarter. Maryland has been excellent in the fourth, Michigan State, and you have done poorly on defense in the fourth quarter. Have to convert on third down. You can't settle for 3 and outs consistently and hope your defense can hold the opposition, Michigan State. You can't do it forever. In fact, you've been shown that countless times this year against Arizona State, Michigan, to name two. You have to score points in the fourth quarter, Michigan State. Again, something you struggle with in all four quarters is scoring points. And you have to force Maryland into passing by shutting down their excellent running attack. At gaining over 200 yards per game on the ground, Maryland is quite formidable on the ground. For Maryland, play a clean game. Limit the penalties. Force turnovers on defense. You've been excellent at that all year. In fact, both teams have. I forgot to put that in Michigan State's section. I apologize. Maryland, you have to get a sack once in a while. You have to keep Michigan State's quarterbacks uncomfortable. To play focused and determined. You're at home. You're in College Park. You've got to use that to your advantage. You have to start hot and keep that fire throughout the game, Maryland, because you do struggle in the first quarter out of the gate. Ensure you are scoring in the fourth quarter, since Michigan State does struggle to shut the door in the fourth. In fact, that's why Michigan State lost to Arizona State. They could not shut the door in the fourth quarter, and it cost them. Now, who to pick? As you see in the stats, these teams are pretty equal as far as stats goes. What sets them apart? Michigan State has been more battle-tested. They have played tougher opponents. And, of course, they played good opponents outside the conference in Arizona State. They did lose, but Arizona State is a formidable out-of-conference opponent. So is Texas for Maryland. But both of those teams played those two teams quite a while ago. This is week 10, so we can't look at that as much. What have they done lately? Maryland did beat Illinois quite well last week. And so did Michigan State. They did beat a very good Purdue team. But last week was then. This is now. Who am I picking? I am going to pick Michigan State 27-13 because Michigan State has such an excellent defense. Maryland's defense is questionable at best. Michigan State's offense is not great. No one's disputing that it is. But they showed me something last week. They showed me they've got fire. This new quarterback might do well. I don't know if Brian Lewerke will be back this week or not. And I don't think anybody does outside of the Michigan State program. We all know how Mark D'Antonio feels about injury reports, so we'll have to see. But I do think Michigan State's going to win regardless against a comparatively weak defense in Maryland. Maryland might put up some yards. I don't think they're going to score much. That is why I picked Michigan State 27-13. More battle-tested, tougher team, and Michigan State is on the uptick. And Maryland is on the downswing. That is it for this particular episode. Please like, subscribe, share with your friends if you like my content. I do appreciate it. Thank you very much in advance for the views and the love. And if you did not like this video, please hit the thumbs down, and let me know in the comments why you did not like this video so I can help to improve your viewing experience. Once again, thank you guys for watching. Enjoy the games this weekend, and until next time.